Hey guys, welcome back to Sparkman Homestead. My name is Krista, and today is unfortunately my kids' last day here. They do fly out tomorrow. So tonight I kind of wanted to make a little bit of an easy meal so I can just relax with them and not have to stress out about making supper. So tonight we will be making a broccoli, cheese, and potato soup, and I want to make some dinner rolls to go along with this soup. And the other thing that I am going to quickly make up a batch of is some pretzels from this cookbook. I really love this cookbook. She has some really good recipes in it, but one of my son's favorite recipes out of this cookbook is the pretzels. We have tried to make the regular pretzels in here, and we've also made the cinnamon sugar one, and both of them are absolutely delicious. So I'm going to make up just a regular batch of pretzels, and that way he can kind of have them, because they are flying out like later in the afternoon tomorrow, so that way he can kind of have them as a breakfast, and then if there's any left, then he could just take them on the plane with him. So that is kind of my project that I want to get done, and it is now noon, so I kind of want to get started on it so that all I have to do for supper is just simply heat the soup up and it's ready to go. We are finally over the Arctic freeze. Everything is now starting to melt out there, and our temperatures are starting to go up. This coming weekend, we're supposed to be in the high 60s again, so it's all over the map, which is a perfect recipe to get sick. So I have been taking my elderberry syrup daily. I made up a batch 2 weeks ago, and I have been kind of taking a tablespoon a day in hopes that it will pour off any sickness from having that super cold weather to all of a sudden shifting to some warmer weather. So yeah, I might make another batch of it though, because I'm running low on it, but that'll be a different day. The other thing that I'm kind of doing around here is I am getting started on kind of getting prepped to do that Three Rivers Homestead pantry challenge. So pretty much what that is, if you are not aware of it, what it is for me, it will be no trips to the grocery store. I do have an Azure standard order that I did put in already, and that will be coming the first week of January, so I'm not really counting that as shopping. And I am allotting myself a weekly budget to go and pick up my raw milk from the Amish and my cream. But that will only be $10. And the way that I'm actually making that work to be a zero spend is we have eggs right now, which is kind of, with the cold weather, the eggs have frozen, so we don't have a lot. But what I'm doing is the money that I'm getting from the sale of those eggs is I'm just simply turning it around, and that's what I'm using to get my milk with during the week. So that is going to kind of zero out that cost. So I'm kind of going through my stuff and getting prepped to be able to do that challenge this month. And I think I'm actually going to make a video with you guys just kind of showing you how I am getting prepared for that zero spend month. But that will come out next week for you guys. So let's get started on getting these pretzels prepped, because they do take an hour to rise. So I want to get started on that. To first get started with these pretzels, we need to get the yeast rising. So what I have here is 1 3/4 cup of warm water. Just going to add it to this bowl, and then we are going to add 4.5 teaspoons. I am just using an instant active dry yeast. It says in here 2 1/4 ounce packets of active dry yeast. The only kind I have is instant, and I've used it. It's worked perfectly fine. So we're gonna add 4.5. And then we're gonna add 1 teaspoon of sugar. And I'm just using a white organic sugar. I'm just gonna give it a light little stir just to kind of get all of the yeast incorporated. Get the sugar incorporated. It says it needs to rest for about 10 minutes, so we're just gonna leave it rest until it starts to bloom and it starts to get all foamy. It takes approximately 10 minutes to get to that state. So what we're gonna do now while we're waiting for this to bloom is we're going to add 5 cups of all-purpose flour to our stand mixer. I have it fitted with the dough hook. It also says you're gonna need a little bit more flour for rolling. And then we're gonna add 1/2 cup of white sugar. Again, this is just the organic granulated sugar that organic evaporated cane sugar or juice, one of them. I get it from Azure Standard. I can leave a link below where I get my flour and my sugar from. That flour is actually amazing. I can use that flour with my sourdough bread and I get a beautiful rise on it. And then again, it works really well in this recipe. It works well with like cakes and cookies. It's an amazing flour. So I will leave a link below and just kind of mention which flour it is that I get, but I get it all from Azure Standard. And then we need to add 2 teaspoons of salt. I'm just using the Redmond's real salt. Okay, so we have everything in here. We're just gonna put it on low for a minute and just kind of get all that salt and sugar incorporated. We have a beautiful bloom. You can see it. The yeast is perfect. So this recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. We are not using vegetable oil. I do not have vegetable oil in my house. We are going to use avocado oil. I've used avocado oil in this recipe and it works amazing. So definitely swap it out for that. What we are going to do is we are going to turn the mixer on low and we are going to add in our yeast mixture. I'm just going to turn it off for a minute just so that I can get everything that's in this bowl in here. And we're also going to add our 1 tablespoon of oil into here as well. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to turn it on and we are going to mix it on medium-low for about 5 minutes. We want the dough to be nice and sticky. Nice, sticky, and smooth. We don't want it too sticky, but we also don't want it too dry. So we'll turn it on for 5 minutes and kind of watch and make sure that everything's getting incorporated good. Okay, so this is really dry, so I have more flour than I need. So I am going to add just a little bit of water to the bottom of this and see if that kind of picks it up a little bit better. That seems good. So now we're going to turn it on and we're going to mix it for about 5 minutes. Okay, our 5 minutes is up and this is pretty smooth. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to quickly just oil this bowl. I'm just using the avocado oil and just putting a little bit on the bottom. Again, you can use cooking spray in this also, but we're just going to use that because it's super easy just to spread it into the bowl. Okay, take this out. You can see the texture of it. It's not like sticking to my hands or anything. So I just usually like to just kind of smooth it out a little bit after I take it out of the mixture. Just shape it into a ball. Just shape it into a ball. And then we're gonna put it in here, just kind of coat it with the oil. And then you can cover with plastic wrap. I'm using one of these like bowl cover things. And so we will leave this rest. It says let rise in a warm spot until it's doubled in size, so about an hour. My house is about 67 right now, so I think what I'm going to do is actually put it into the oven with the light on, not turned on, just with the light on, and then we'll let this rise for an hour, and then we're going to come back and then we get to shape them and cook them. So yummy. This is a super, super, super easy recipe to make. I usually end up making this with my son because it is very straightforward to make. So we'll let this do our rising, and then what we're gonna do in the meantime is we are going to get that soup all prepped and get that started to cook. So I'm doing a little bit of a hack with this recipe. It calls for 1 small onion, 1 medium carrot, and 1 celery stick. I have all of these frozen vegetables in my freezer that I have pre-chopped. So I'm just going to use these. So I'm going to put them in a little bowl right now and just kind of put them in the microwave for a minute just to get them halfway defrosted. I don't need them completely defrosted. And what we're going to do is we are going to add them to a little food processor. This is just one of these KitchenAid little blender chopper food processors. And so we'll just add it to that, and then what we're going to do is we are going to chop it until it is finely chopped up, and then we will add it to a pot and get it on some butter. So let's get that kind of all situated. The other thing This recipe, other than the chicken broth, you could also use vegetable broth and make this completely a vegetarian mix. Not vegan because it does have cheese, but you could make it vegetarian by subbing the chicken out with the vegetable broth. But because it doesn't have any actual meat in it, I am going to cook up some bacon, and then we will have that kind of as like a crumb topping on top of the soup. So we will get this cooked up. I'm just going to cook this in my oven, just put it on a cookie sheet, put the oven at 400, and then just kind of watch it. Just flip it as it needs to be flipped. So we'll get the vegetables all defrosted. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball, because it calls for one carrot chopped up. So we'll just kind of eyeball it and say that I would say maybe half a cup is 1 carrot, maybe 3/4 cup. You know what would be a really good idea when it is like preserving season? It would be a really smart idea to take some onions, celery, and carrots, pre-chop them up, and then freeze them all together, because that is kind of the staple for a lot of recipes like soups or stews, anything like that. Those three, that melody is usually what it calls for. So it would be a smart idea, and I might do that next year, is just kind of freeze them all together so that I kind of have a little grab bag, so I don't need to have separate bags everywhere. So I will remember that for next year. Okay, and then same thing, about 3/4 cup to half a cup of celery. Being that we're going into the pantry challenge next week, this is a really good recipe to use up some of the things that you have sitting in your freezer. And you don't need to just stick with 1 celery stick or 1 carrot. You could really take this recipe and modify it however you like to do it. This is just kind of the base recipe for this. And this is a really good recipe. I've made this a lot, and it is super, super delicious. And then for an onion, it calls for 1 small onion. It doesn't specify whether it needs to be a yellow, white, or red, so I have some red chopped up onions in my freezer. These onions, they did not last very long on the shelf. I had to get them into the freezer fairly quick. I'm still going to grow them next year. I actually already have my order in for my onions. But yeah, they don't have a long shelf life, so I have a lot of these in the freezer, so I want to get them used up before we bring in the new onions next year. Okay, so we've got our little bowl of chopped vegetables, so I'm just going to put it in the microwave. Probably going to microwave it for maybe like a minute or two, just to kind of get it half defrosted. One thing I also like to do, sorry I am cut off, is I like to kind of get everything pre-prepped. This recipe does move fairly quick when making it, so it is extremely helpful to have everything pre-prepped before you make it. So it calls for 2 potatoes peeled and diced very small. So I'm going to get these potatoes peeled and diced up. I am also going to get some cheddar cheese. I'm just using this Landmark raw cheddar cheese. This is the stuff that I get from Azure Standard. So I will just get this all grated up. Also, this recipe, it calls for 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese. So we'll just get this shredded up. It does specify to use reduced fat, but I do not do reduced in this house. We do full fat. So we will get these shredded up. Okay, I took the dough out of the oven because I am going to get this bacon started. So I'm going to preheat the oven to 400 degrees. I have 2 cookie sheets here with my silicone mats. And I'm just going to lay the bacon on and put them in. I have my racks set so that I can have 2 cookie sheets in there at a time. So let's get these on the sheets here. And then once we get these in the oven, then we can start that soup. Bacon is all ready to go in. We will just wait for the oven to preheat. I'm gonna wash my hands. So we have a large saucepan, and we are going to add in 1 tablespoon of butter. I might be doing a little bit more than a tablespoon. okay. I'll get this on medium heat. Oh, the other thing we need to do that I did not add in here, because I have them already done, we need to also add garlic to this. It calls for 2 cloves of garlic minced, but because we did not throw it in here, I use that Costco kind. This is what I use, and it comes pre-minced, so I did not put it in here, but if you were using cloves of garlic, you would have added it to this and grinded it up. So I'm gonna add about half a teaspoon to this chopped veggie stuff. I added it to this. That way it can go all in at the same time. Okay, so the butter is all melted, so we are gonna add the veggies now. Okay, so we're just gonna stir them all up in here. Also at the end, we immersion blend this, so even if I didn't get this celery and the onions like super diced, they'll get immersion blended at the end too, so get them really mushy. So we are just gonna saute this on a somewhat of a low heat for about 5 minutes. I'm just looking for them to get nice and soft. I'm actually gonna go in and add just a little bit more butter, because we are going to be eventually making a roux in here, so I like it to be good, and the vegetables are looking a little bit like dry, so I'm just adding a little bit more butter. Okay, these are good and sauteed, and I do not want them to burn. So now what we're going to do is we are going to add 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. It says you can use all-purpose, you can use gluten-free, or you can use whole wheat. I'm just using that all-purpose. And then you add salt and pepper to taste. I go a little heavy with the salt on this because it needs it. All of the time that I've made it, I always go too light with the salt. The other thing too is it needs chicken broth, and I actually don't salt my chicken broth when I make it, so it definitely needs to have more salt added in with this. Okay, so it is nice and smooth. So what we are going to do now is we are going to add 1 cup of milk. I am using a whole milk. The recipe does say you can use a fat-free milk, but we don't have that here. So we're using the whole milk. And then you need to add 2.5 cups of chicken broth. We're just using our homemade canned stuff. I'm gonna add a quart of it, so that's about 3 cups. Okay, and we are also gonna add our diced potatoes. I'm gonna actually probably go in and add a little bit more salt. And then I'm just gonna test it to make sure that the salt is good. Yeah, perfect. And we need to change it to high. And then we need to get this boiling, and then we're gonna cover it, and then we're gonna turn it back down to low and cook it for about 15 minutes. We're pretty much just trying to cook the potatoes now. I'm gonna put the bacon in, it's come to temperature now. So we'll just keep an eye on it. I'm not gonna really set a timer. This is also boiling, so I'm gonna give it a quick stir, and then we'll put the lid on and we will turn it down to low. And then we will set the timer for 15 minutes for this guy. Look at the, I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to puff up, so these are almost ready too. We'll probably deal with these once the bacon's done. Those potatoes are almost already cooked in that soup. What I'm doing right now is I'm just gonna be, my microwave. I'm just going to rotate these bacon pieces just so that they cook evenly. I want to get also these buns started. They need a little bit of time to rise. This is just a 1-hour dinner roll recipe. This recipe I got from Becky over at Acre Homestead. I believe that's where I got this. It may also actually be Three Rivers Homestead. It's one of them. I got the recipe from one of those websites. So, or one of those channels. So what we're gonna do is to one of these 2-cup Pyrex mixing things, we are going to add half a cup of water and 1 cup of milk, and then we're gonna put it in a microwave, and we're going to get it to 110 degrees. We'll just put the milk in. Again, I'm using whole milk. Okay, half a cup of water. So we're gonna put this in. I'm gonna start it at a minute and then we'll check the temperature. Okay, let's check the temperature. It's only at 95, so we need maybe 30 more seconds. To this, we are gonna add 2 tablespoons of melted butter. That's our timer for the soup. We're gonna add 2 tablespoons of honey. I'm gonna add a little bit more than 2 tablespoons because I made this and I didn't find it was sweet enough. So I'm probably gonna add maybe, let's say 3. This is just honey from a local beekeeper. It is so delicious. And I'm just gonna kind of stir this together a little bit. Just trying to get that honey incorporated. And we are going to add 1 tablespoon of active dry yeast. Just add it on top of that, and then we're just gonna lightly stir it in so it gets a little incorporated. And then we're gonna let this sit for, again, about probably 10 minutes just so that it blooms and gets all bubbly and active. Take the lid off the soup here. And everything looks like it's pretty cooked. So we're gonna add 4 cups of broccoli. This is what I'm using, just this stuff that I got from Azure Standard. It's like this video is, you would think it's sponsored, but it's not. It's just that I use them for literally all of my food. So we're gonna add 4 cups of this to the soup. Now this is frozen. It says to use 4, let me get the recipe here. It says 4 cups or about 2 heads of broccoli florets chopped into small pieces. Now it probably ideally should not be frozen, but that's fine. We're just using frozen. So we'll get about 4 cups in here. Okay, and then we're gonna add 1 tablespoon of Parmesan cheese. Stir that in, and then we are going to cook this until the broccoli is cooked. So probably I would say maybe 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to leave it uncovered to cook it. I think because we used frozen broccoli, it brought the temperature down quite a bit in there, so we're just going to have to wait for it to kind of come to temperature. I have increased the temperature to medium. What I'm doing right now is I'm just greasing a 9x13 Pyrex baking pan. This is what we're gonna put the buns in. So I'm just getting this greased while we're waiting for this. And I think that bacon's actually done too, so I'm gonna take that out. And then that way it frees up the oven so that we can get started on our pretzels. Getting a plate out, and I'm going to put some paper towel on it, and we will get this bacon out because it is definitely done. So I just checked the broccoli and it is cooked now. So what we're gonna do is it calls to add that 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese, and it says 2 slices of 2% American cheese. I don't have that, so I'm not adding that in. So I just grated up that cheddar cheese, so we'll just put that in, and it is still on about a 6. So all we're gonna do is just stir that cheese in and get it good and melted, and then we're gonna take it off of the heat and immersion blend it. So we're gonna take it off the heat, and I just have my immersion blender here. And so it says, using an immersion blender, quickly blend part of the soup for a second or 2. Now at this point you can choose how chunky you want to leave it. If you want to leave like some of the potato chunks and broccoli chunks, then I would say leave it at this. But we like it to be that kind of creamy consistency where it's smooth. So I am going to immersion blend it until pretty much there's everything smoothed in. I'm also going to give it a taste test and just make sure that the salt and pepper is right with it, because if it isn't, I can add it at this point. Yeah, it's good. This is the consistency of this soup. It is nice and creamy. Now there are still a little bit of chunks in there, which is fine. There's like a potato chunk in there, but yeah, it's super yummy. This is a really good recipe. I'm just gonna put the lid back on that and kind of put it to the back of the burner because we still need to get the buns made and we also need to get the pretzels made, and it's only 2:30. So feels good to have that dinner prepped where all we have to do is kind of the fun stuff now, like the carbs. So that pretzel dough, I just checked it. I'll show you guys. Just check the pretzel dough and you can see it has risen quite a bit. So they are ready to get in the oven. I need to actually clean the cookie sheets because we use them to make the bacon. So I gotta do a good washing of that. And then from there we can get everything started to make the pretzels. So let me just kind of clean up this working area and get these cookie sheets washed up. We have to get the dough started for these things, and the yeast has been sitting in here for a while, so I don't want it to go bad. So I want to get the dough started for the buns. So what we're going to do to a stand mixer, we are going to add 3.5 cups of flour. It says 3.5 to 4 cups, so you want to start with 3.5 and then add the extra if you need it. And then 1 teaspoon of salt. And then we're going to put the dough hook on the mixer and we're just going to incorporate it for a minute. Okay, so now we want to pour in, this is our yeast, butter, milk, and honey. We're going to pour this in. And so we're going to mix this for 4 to 5 minutes. We're going to pay attention to it. If it is too wet, we're going to add more flour to it. I'm just scraping down the sides of it to get it more incorporated. So it is definitely too sticky, so I'm going to take half a cup of flour and slowly add it in until it gets to the consistency that I want it to get to. That's good. We're going to mix it for 5 minutes now. That has a minute left to stir. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pot of water. This is just almost halfway full. I'm going to get this to a boil because we need to dunk our pretzels into this. I will show you as we go along, but we need to get this boiling. We also need to get the oven preheated at 425. We have our cookie sheets here. I am going to take this dough and just put it onto here because we're actually going to need this bowl to put our dinner roll stuff in. Okay, so we want to lightly flour the countertop before we turn out the dough onto it. Flour there. Get this dough out. Trying to get most of the dough out of here because we're going to reuse this bowl, which is fine, it's just dinner rolls. So I'm going to lightly, that's our timer for the dough. So I'm just lightly re-greasing this bowl just so that the dough for those don't stick. Okay, so we will get this turned off. This is a very sticky dough. Okay, so we're just gonna get the dough out of here. I don't know if you can see how sticky it is. Probably put a little bit more flour in it. So I'm just kind of putting it all around in the grease so that it gets grease all over it. So we're gonna cover this, and then same with the pretzel dough, we're gonna let this rise until it's double in size. Because it has so much yeast in it, it says it usually only takes about 15 minutes. So, well, it doesn't say double in size, it just says let rise for 15 minutes, but I do like to get that double rise. So we will leave it, we'll put it over on the oven, and then we will get started with our pretzels. Okay, so one thing I've noticed in this book is it says here it makes 12 pretzels, but then in the directions it says here to divide it into 16 equal parts. So that would be 16 pretzels. I have found that when I make the 16 pieces, they end up to be really small pretzel. So I think we're gonna aim to maybe make 12 pretzels. So we'll take this dough and divide it into 12, and then that way we get a nice big pretzel like it is in the picture. So we're gonna divide this into 12 pieces, and then we are going to roll the pieces out into a 24-inch long rope, and then we're gonna twist it like a traditional pretzel. I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love cutting dough. Feels so cool. I don't know how equal they are, but it's fine. So we have all of our rolls. I'm just gonna kind of shape it into a ball. I actually find it's easier to do this on a non-floured surface. It gets a better roll. I actually usually have my son helping me with the dipping part. I make the pretzels and he dips them. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is just shape it into a pretzel. So we're just gonna bring it up, we're gonna cross it up top and bring it down below, like so. So we're just gonna make them and put them aside. We have that pot of water boiling. To that boiling water, when it comes to a full boil, we're gonna take it off and we're gonna add 1/3 cup of baking soda to it. And what we're gonna do is take the finished pretzels and actually dip them into that water and then put them on the cookie sheet and then sprinkle them with a little bit of flaked salt. So let me get these all shaped up first. I realized I actually have to bump this shelf down. Okay, so water is boiling. This is kind of like a science experiment. It's really, really cool. So I have 1/3 of baking soda. Now the very first time I made this, me and James, we just dumped the full 1/3 in, and it was quite interesting. So I slowly now drop it in so that I don't get that reaction. You see why it would have exploded when I dumped it all in. So I'm just gonna stir this to get all the baking soda incorporated. I have this completely off the heat. So I can usually fit 6 pretzels per cookie sheet. Then I have one of these neat tools. I don't know what this is called. I got it on Amazon and I will link it for you guys, but this is awesome for blanching stuff and for doing this. So we're gonna take 1 pretzel and we are gonna literally just dunk it in for like 30 seconds. And then we're gonna take it out, kind of shake it a bit because you don't want too much water on this cookie sheet. And then we're gonna drop it down. Do that for all 6 of them. Sometimes you have to reshape them because they get kind of all wonky. These pretzels kind of remind me of like an Aunt Annie style pretzel. They're not like your traditional, they're more like a bread style, like not, I don't know how to explain it. You'll see when they come out. And this is the way we absolutely love them. So we have them all on the cookie sheet now. So what we're gonna do is just take a little bit of flaked salt and just a little bit, because a little goes a very long way. And we are just gonna sprinkle it on top. Now the recipe says to put these in for 8 minutes, but with my oven, 8 minutes does not cook them enough. So I put them in for 10 minutes. The oven and set the timer. And then when they come out, we are gonna take a half a stick of butter and we're gonna melt it. And when they come out of the oven, we're just gonna use a pastry brush and we just brush them with melted butter. What I like to do, because we're using melted butter, is I take a drying rack and just a tray, put the drying rack over top of the tray, and then I put the pretzels here, and then I just brush them with butter, and that way the butter just kind of drips through onto the bottom. And then once they are completely like dry and hardened, because the house is kind of cold, they'll dry pretty quick, I'll just move them to a regular drying sheet. So get this all ready for when they come out. I need to get this butter melted also. I'm gonna put it in the microwave for about 30 seconds and then get the rest of these pretzels rolled out. Let's check on these pretzels. They are good to go. So we're gonna get them out of the oven. We're gonna quickly put the next sheet in and get that timer set for 10 minutes for those. And for these, put the oven mitt on so I don't burn my hand. So we're just gonna take them off. And you see how they rise and they get all fluffy? This is what I'm saying by they're not kind of the traditional pretzel, they're more of like a bread, which we absolutely love. I'll show you what the bottoms look like, nice and cooked. So what you want to do now is take that melted butter, you're just gonna liberally, like you're gonna coat it full of that melted butter. And these are best enjoyed hot. They're so good. Jesus will probably get in here very soon because we'll smell them. They'll be hot. There, all done. So just get the other ones out of the oven and then we will finish the dinner rolls. Pretzels are all done. Now we are going to get started on these dinner rolls. So the dough has definitely risen quite a bit. So we're just going to turn it out onto the countertop here. So it says to punch the dough down and then divide it into 12 equal balls. Not equal, but fine. So we're just going to roll them into the bowl. So I just tuck them under each other and then just roll them like this. Stick my thumb and roll like this. And then just double it up. And so this is our greased cookie sheet, or this is our greased casserole dish. So we are just going to place them in there. Okay, so we have them all put in here. Now we are going to cover these with a damp tea towel and we are going to let them rest for about 20 to 30 minutes. We need them to double in size. So I'm gonna put this over on the stove. Because we've had the stove on making the pretzels, it's nice and warm over here. So we're just gonna leave these rest for 30 minutes and then when we come back, I will show you the rest. Okay, the buns are good and risen. I want to show you guys this. Steven got me this for Christmas. This little container. Love it. I'm gonna put my salt in it. I seen Farmhouse on Boom had it and I absolutely fell in love with it. And we've been looking for probably, I would say, the last year for one at Antique. And Steven found that one at the Antique Mall for me. I absolutely love it. So I've washed it all out, but I haven't put my salt in it yet. Just wanted to show you guys that. Okay, so our buns are good and risen. That's what they are now. So what we need to do is we need to put an egg wash on them. So I have a clean egg here. Yes, I'm gonna add a little bit of water. And we're just gonna add this egg wash to the top of the buns. Oh shoot, you know what we need to do? We need to get the oven preheated at 400 degrees. It shouldn't take that long because we just made those pretzels. So we will get these covered. All covered. Now we gotta wait for that oven to preheat. We're gonna put them in the oven for 20 minutes now. And I am gonna go and enjoy a pretzel. I just made some Earl Grey tea. I'm gonna have this and a pretzel. It is 4:30. So I thought I was gonna have supper made early, but it ended up that I'm making it literally at the time I would have made it. Anyways, I can smell these buns, so I'm gonna check on them because this thing is not baked and they are definitely done. Here's the buns, just took them out of the oven. Off. So I'm gonna let them kind of rest. They are really delicious. You know what? I might actually even put some melted butter on top. Hold on. I have a little bit of butter here. I'm just gonna melt some on top. This is a very messy way of doing it. Okay, perfect. Those are good. Okay, I'm happy to have supper all done. Thanks so much, guys, for joining me while we make that pretty delicious soup. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Have a great day or night whenever you're watching this, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.